In April of 2025, 30 humpback whales, Megaptera novaangliae, shut down ship traffic in Cape Cod Bay. 100 years ago, commercial whalers had reduced the humpback whale population by 96%. But the whales are back, and they are going places nobody expected. By the 1960s, the humpback population had collapsed from an estimated 125,000 animals to fewer than 5,000. The international moratorium on commercial whaling came in 1986, and that gave the species the protection it desperately needed. Since then, humpback numbers have climbed back to roughly 80,000, which is about 65% of their pre-whaling population. In 2016, most humpback populations were removed from the United States endangered species list. But the part of this story that does not get told is where the whales are going. Humpbacks have returned to feeding grounds they abandoned decades ago, including waters that had been silent for generations. New York Harbor, which is one of the most heavily trafficked shipping corridors in the world, now sees regular humpback whale sightings. The Hudson River estuary, which was historically part of their range, is being recolonized right now. In 2011, researchers spotted 5 humpback whales off New York City. By 2025, the same research organization had cataloged 470 individual whales in those same waters. The photo that tells this story better than any number came in August of 2023. Scientists captured images of humpback whales with the Manhattan skyline directly behind them, just 5 miles from the Coney Island shore. The Wildlife Conservation Society put it this way: "It is clear that whales have become regular New Yorkers." To understand why this return matters, you have to understand how bad things got. The humpback whale was hunted across every ocean for nearly 2 centuries. Industrial whaling did not spare populations. It did not spare mothers with calves. It did not spare the young. The Oceania population in the South Pacific tells the most brutal part of this story. That population, which once numbered around 14,000 whales, was hunted down to fewer than 40 mature breeding females. The Soviet whaling industry was largely responsible for that destruction, and the damage was so complete that scientists believed the population might never recover. Official estimates put the pre-whaling global population at roughly 125,000 humpbacks. But genetic studies from Stanford University suggest a much larger number, closer to 750,000 or even 1 million animals when counting breeding females alone. That means the real loss was even worse than the official numbers show. The collapse was not just a loss of numbers, it was a loss of culture, of migration routes, of social structure. The whales that survived were the lucky ones, but they were also the ones that had lost almost everyone they might have learned from. 1986 changed everything. The International Whaling Commission voted for a moratorium on commercial whaling, and that moratorium remains in place to this day. It was not an easy fight, and some countries still hunt whales under objections or exemptions. But for the humpback, it was enough. The recovery did not happen overnight. These baleen whales reproduce slowly. A female typically gives birth to 1 calf every 2 to 3 years, and the calf stays with its mother for nearly a year. That means, even under perfect conditions, the population can only grow by about 7 or 8% annually. But grow they did. By 2016, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration determined that 9 of the 14 distinct humpback population segments had recovered enough to be removed from the endangered species list. 4 populations remain endangered, including the western North Pacific and Central America populations. 1 population in Mexico is still listed as threatened, but the overall trend is undeniable. The species is coming back. The return to New York Harbor is not an accident. It is a signal that the ecosystem has healed more than anyone expected. The same waters that were so polluted in the 1970s that the Gowanus Canal became a Superfund site are now clean enough to support menhaden, which are small, schooling fish that humpback whales love to eat. The Clean Water Act of 1972 made much of this possible. The Marine Mammal Protection Act, also passed in 1972, gave whales legal protection inside United States waters. Groups like Riverkeeper and advocates like Pete Seeger spent decades fighting to clean up the Hudson River and New York Harbor. The Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission also capped commercial menhaden fishing, allowing these crucial forage fish to recover. And slowly, the water improved. The fish came back, and then the whales followed. Gotham Whale, the research organization that tracks New York City humpbacks, started cataloging whales in 2011. Their first catalog had 5 individual whales. Today, that catalog holds 470 individuals, and each one has been identified by the unique pattern on the underside of its tail fluke. No 2 humpbacks have the same pattern, which means researchers can track individual animals across years and even decades. What they have found is that these whales are not just passing through. They are feeding. They are staying for weeks at a time. They are returning year after year, and they are doing this just miles from some of the densest human population centers on Earth. April of 2025 brought an event that made headlines around the world. Approximately 30 North Atlantic right whales and humpback whales amassed in Cape Cod Bay to feed on dense patches of zooplankton. The concentration of whales was so high that the Cape Cod Canal had to close to ship traffic for an hour and 20 minutes, from 6:30 in the morning until 7:50. The North Atlantic right whale is a different species from the humpback, and it remains critically endangered with only a few hundred individuals left. But seeing both species feeding together in such numbers was a sign that something real had changed. The whales were not just surviving, they were thriving enough to show up in places where humans have to get out of the way. The Cape Cod Canal closure was brief, just a single morning, but it symbolized something larger. A century ago, whales were fleeing human activity. Now, in some places, humans have to pause while whales feed. None of this means the danger is gone. The New York Bight, which is the roughly Switzerland-sized stretch of ocean from southern New Jersey to eastern Long Island, is now both a whale feeding ground and one of the busiest shipping corridors in the world. Those two realities do not mix well. Gotham Whale has documented humpback whales with vessel strike scars and deep propeller wounds. The whales survive these injuries sometimes, but not always. In May of 2024, a cruise ship arrived at a New York port with a dead endangered sea whale draped across its bow. The whale had been struck and carried into port without the crew even knowing. The regulatory response has been slow. Current vessel speed rules require ships 20 meters or longer to travel no faster than 10 knots in seasonal management areas from January through May. But in January of 2025, NOAA withdrew the North Atlantic right whale vessel speed rule that would have expanded those protections to larger areas, longer time periods, and smaller vessels. The result is that whales are feeding in busy waters, while the ships that could kill them are still moving at dangerous speeds. This is the honest tension in the humpback recovery. The species is coming back, but it is coming back to a world that is still full of risks. The same laws that helped them recover, the Clean Water Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Endangered Species Act, are all under constant political pressure, and the whales themselves do not know where the safe zones end and the shipping lanes begin. Here is something most people do not know about whales. They are not just recovering, they are working. Humpback whales are what scientists call a keystone species. Their presence physically changes the ocean around them. The mechanism has a name, the whale pump. When whales dive deep to feed and return to the surface to breathe, they bring nutrient-rich water up from the deep ocean and release it near the surface. Those nutrients fertilize phytoplankton, the microscopic organisms that produce roughly half of all the oxygen on Earth. Phytoplankton also absorbs an estimated 37 billion tons of carbon dioxide annually, more than all the world's forests combined. A single great whale, over its lifetime, sequesters an estimated 33 tons of carbon dioxide, more than 1,000 trees. And when a whale dies naturally and sinks to the ocean floor, the story does not end there. Scientists call it a whale fall. A single whale carcass on the ocean floor can feed up to 400 species in sequence as the body slowly decomposes over 50 to 100 years. It becomes an entire ecosystem built from one life. Researchers at the International Monetary Fund calculated that restoring great whale populations to pre-whaling levels could increase ocean productivity enough to capture 1.7 billion tons of carbon dioxide per year. That is comparable to adding another Amazon rainforest to the planet. So the humpback comeback is not just a wildlife story, it is a climate story. Every whale that survives, every calf that is born, makes the ocean more alive and the atmosphere a little cleaner. Before we end, it is worth stepping back and asking how old this story really is. Cetaceans, the group that includes all whales and dolphins, first entered the ocean roughly 50 million years ago. They descended from land-dwelling mammals that walked back into the sea. Their closest living land relative today is the hippopotamus. You can still see the evidence inside a whale's body. Buried inside the pectoral fin are vestigial finger bones. The same bones that are in your hand right now, reshaped by 50 million years of ocean life. Humpbacks have been singing to each other for longer than our species has existed. Their songs can last up to 24 hours. They travel thousands of miles through deep ocean sound channels, and they are not random. Humpback songs evolve culturally. A new song pattern introduced by one male can spread across an entire ocean basin within 2 years, passed from whale to whale, like a melody moving across a continent. Researchers at the University of Queensland documented exactly this in 2011. A new song appeared off the Australian East Coast, and within 2 years had completely replaced the existing song across the Pacific. Humpbacks also carry something even more fragile than songs. They carry memory. Calves learn migration routes from their mothers. When a population is decimated and the elders who held that knowledge are gone, the roots are lost. The return to New York Harbor is not just animals finding food. It is a species slowly reconstructing knowledge that was almost permanently erased. That is why recovery is not just about numbers. Every whale alive today carries culture forward. That nearly did not survive. The last wild humpbacks nearly did not make it, but they did. And now, 50 million years after their ancestors walked into the sea for the first time, they are swimming back into New York Harbor. That is worth pausing for. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.